What if I told you that everything you've ever wanted already exists? Not in some distant future, but right now, vibrating on a frequency you haven't learned to tune into yet. What if the universe isn't deciding whether you're worthy of your dreams? It's simply waiting for you to stop blocking the delivery. And what if asking isn't a request sent upward, but an agreement whispered inward? You're about to discover why "ask and it is given" isn't just a pretty phrase, it's a law as reliable as gravity. A spiritual equation that governs everything from galaxies to gardens, from the smallest whisper to the grandest dream. Here's what nobody tells you. You're asking all the time, not just with your words, but with your emotions, your focus, your assumptions, your mood. And life is always answering, not always in language, not always in form, but always in frequency. That feeling you get when you want something deeply, that's not temptation, it's invitation. Your desire isn't a test of your discipline, it's a map of your expansion. For too long, we've been taught to fear desire, to bury it beneath obedience, to tame it with guilt, and call that virtue. But desire, pure soul-born desire, is not sin, it's signal, it's blueprint, it's divine communication in the language of longing. Think about it. A child wants to play in the rain. They don't stop and wonder if they've earned joy today. They run toward it, arms open, because somewhere deep within, they still remember, you don't need to prove yourself to receive beauty. But somewhere along the way, we learn to apologize for wanting things. We learn to shrink our desires, to make them spiritual by making them smaller. We started believing that spiritual means empty-handed. But here's the truth that changes everything. The size of your desire does not intimidate the universe. The only thing that causes delay is your belief that your desire is too big, too late, or too selfish. Behind everything you can see, touch, and control, there's a field of intelligence, and it does not delay. It's not trying to decide if you're worthy. It's not keeping score of your past. It's not comparing you to someone more spiritual or more disciplined. It simply receives, and once it receives, it begins to rearrange everything in response to the signal you've sent. You may have whispered your desire in silence. You may have screamed it through tears. You may have asked without words at all, only through the aching pulse of your heart. And still, you were heard. Every ask, no matter how small, how messy, how delayed, was received in full. Because the source that responds to asking doesn't operate in human time. It doesn't wait to hear the right phrasing. It doesn't require you to kneel in the perfect position or offer your request with polished clarity. The source responds to essence, to vibration, to frequency. It knows what you mean, even when you don't know how to say it. It knows what you're asking for, even when you're asking from pain. You think you're waiting for the universe to give you something. But here's what's actually happening. The universe is waiting for you to stop blocking what's already yours. Every time you ask for something, it's immediately given. But it can only arrive through the doorway of your alignment. And that's where most people get stuck. They ask from inspiration, then live from doubt. They pray in meditation, then worry in traffic. They ask in ceremony, then question everything the next morning. Your vibration is your vote. The field responds to your sustained state, not your momentary spark. There's a sacred space between asking and receiving, not of denial, but of preparation. This is where most people lose their way, not because they weren't heard, but because they misinterpret the stillness as absence and the delay as rejection. But here's the truth. The moment you ask, it is given. But it can only arrive through the doorway of your alignment. And alignment takes trust. It takes unlearning. It takes becoming a vibrational match for what you've already claimed. The universe will never give you something you're not ready to hold. Not because you're being tested, but because you're being tuned. What feels like delay is often grace. What feels like nothing happening is actually everything rearranging behind the veil. And here's the key that unlocks everything. You don't receive what you ask for. You receive what you feel as already true. Your emotions aren't just responses, they're frequencies. Each one, joy, gratitude, certainty, or fear and doubt, places you on a channel that broadcasts your inner world to reality. The field doesn't respond to the words of your prayer. It responds to the feeling behind it. You say, I want abundance, but what are you feeling? Tightness, desperation, anxiety? Then that's the frequency being registered, and reality will mirror it back with more reasons to feel the same. This isn't punishment, it's precision. To receive what you asked for, you must begin to feel as though it has already arrived. This is the shift. This is the difference between asking and receiving. Receiving begins when your nervous system starts rehearsing peace before the circumstances change. When your body starts walking with certainty before the outcome shows up. When your inner world becomes so saturated with the frequency of having that the outer world has no choice but to respond. Let me tell you about a woman who desired love. She wrote it down, meditated on it, prayed for it. But in her daily life, she continued to feel unworthy, guarded, disappointed. She wasn't wrong, she was just out of tune. The love she wanted existed, but she wasn't feeling her way into alignment with the version of herself who receives it. Then something shifted. She began changing her emotional signature. She started softening. She started trusting. She began walking, speaking, and dressing as the version of herself who knows she is already loved. Not by someone else, but by herself. That inner recalibration sent a new signal, and life responded. It wasn't about pretending, it was about practicing the feeling until it wasn't foreign anymore, until it became natural, until it became hers. Sometimes the answer looks like nothing is happening. You ask, you align, and still, silence. Your mind starts its familiar chant. Maybe I did it wrong. Maybe the answer is no. But what if the silence is the answer? The universe doesn't always respond in language. It responds in orchestration, in people exiting, in doors closing you never would have had the courage to shut, in old structures dissolving to make space for something better. Sometimes the answer doesn't show up in what arrives, but in what leaves. Take someone who prays for clarity in their life's purpose. After asking, all they feel is fog. No epiphany, no roadmap. Then slowly, without fanfare, certain responsibilities begin to dissolve. A job opportunity falls through. A relationship grows quiet. The structure of their old life begins to loosen, making space for something they didn't know they needed. At first it looks like nothing. At worst, it feels like loss. But it's not punishment. It's preparation. The answer wasn't withheld. It was unfolding behind the veil of their expectations. There's a subtle lie that lingers in the heart of even the most spiritual seeker. I must earn what I ask for. It doesn't always speak in those words. Sometimes it hides in action, the overgiving, the overthinking, the need to prove yourself before you feel allowed to receive. It sounds like, let me just fix myself a little more. Maybe I need to meditate harder. If I were truly spiritual, I wouldn't want this at all. And just like that, you delay the arrival of what's already yours. Not because you lack power, but because you're unconsciously placing your desires behind a gate labeled only if I deserve it. But here's the truth that breaks the illusion. The universe is not transactional. It doesn't reward effort. It reflects state. What you receive has nothing to do with whether you've earned it, and everything to do with whether you're aligned with it. Your worth was never up for debate. It was never meant to be part of the equation. The field doesn't ask if you've done enough. It only asks, are you being the one who matches what you've asked for? That's not morality. That's mechanics. Everything you want already exists. Not in the distant future, not hidden behind layers of hard work, but here, now, vibrating on a frequency you may not yet be tuned to. The question is never, is it available? The question is always, am I available to it? You don't wait for the money to feel secure. You feel secure, and the money arrives. You don't wait for the answer to feel peace. You feel peace, and the answer finds you. This is the frequency of receiving, to live from the vibration of already having, not from the waiting room of desire. And yes, this takes courage, because the world will tempt you to believe only what your senses show. But your senses are delayed feedback. They are the echo, not the source. Your feeling is the source. There's a point where your asking must evolve, not because your first prayer was wrong, but because you've expanded. Your first ask comes from contraction. I need this so I can feel safe. Please give me this so I can know I matter. But the higher asking comes from the version of you who knows that the feeling must come first. That joy doesn't come from the relationship. The joy makes space for the relationship. That peace doesn't come from the outcome. The peace becomes the environment in which the outcome appears. This isn't spiritual bypassing. This is vibrational wisdom. Someone once asked, "Please help me escape this job I hate." That prayer may open doors, but the version of them still in resistance, in bitterness, in blame, will carry that energy into the next chapter. Now imagine they evolve into a deeper state of self-leadership. They begin to ask, "Show me how to serve from joy. Align me with the path where I feel alive and supported." The ask has changed, not because the destination is different, but because the energy behind the ask has matured. And when the energy matures, the answer accelerates. Behind every genuine ask, something starts moving. People begin shifting. Ideas start forming. Opportunities turn in your direction. You may not see it yet, but the universe is already in motion. There's no such thing as an ignored ask, only a misread timeline. You think nothing's happening, but everything is. And the moment you return to trust, you resynchronize with the delivery. The field is always holding everything you asked for, waiting not for your effort, but for your permission. The final transformation happens when you stop asking and start walking as the answer. You've stopped waiting for it because you've become the one who carries its fulfillment in your breath, your posture, your presence. This isn't pretending, it's embodiment. You've remembered that the most powerful ask is the one that dissolves into being. You stop saying, "Please, let it come," and start living as if it already has. The woman asking for healing stops trying to get better and starts living as someone already whole. She makes decisions from that space, speaks from that space. Her body becomes the proof. The man seeking abundance stops hustling to prove his worth and starts allowing small pleasures again. He walks as the version of himself who no longer equates struggle with virtue. Opportunities appear with ease. When you reach this stage, you don't stop desiring, but your desires are no longer fueled by lack. They're fueled by expansion. You don't ask from the ache of emptiness. You create from the joy of being full. Here's what's happening right now. As you listen to these words, every genuine desire you've ever felt has set something in motion. Every prayer you've whispered has been received. Every dream you've dared to dream has begun its journey toward form. The universe is not waiting to decide if you're worthy. It's not keeping score. It's not comparing you to anyone else. It's simply responding to your frequency, your state, your vibration. You were never waiting for life to give. Life was waiting for you to ask without resistance. The gap isn't between you and what you want. The gap is between your desire and your embodiment. Close that space, and everything you've ever asked for comes rushing in to meet you. Reality is a mirror, but not of your actions, of your inner state. When your inner world is settled, the outer world reflects it. When your frequency is clear, life has no choice but to respond in kind. This is why two people can take the same action and get completely different results. It's not about what you do, it's about the state you're doing it from. The person who asks from desperation gets more reasons to feel desperate. The person who asks from knowing gets evidence of their knowing. The person who asks from joy finds joy meeting them at every turn. Once you understand this law, you stop waiting for life to grant you things and start walking as one who already has them. Not to fake it, but because you know what you've asked for is already yours. The field has already rearranged. The answer has already taken shape. Now it waits for you to match it, to claim it, to become the one who receives without resistance. You stop chasing what you want and start becoming it, and everything else comes rushing in to meet you there. Every spiritual tradition has pointed to this same truth. Ask, and it is given. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and the door will be opened. But they weren't talking about begging, they were talking about alignment. They weren't talking about earning, they were talking about becoming. The door isn't locked, it's already open. You're not waiting for permission, you're waiting for recognition. Recognition that you are the answer to your own prayer. You are the fulfillment of your own desire. Ask, and it is given, isn't a promise. It's a law. And once you align with it, you'll wonder how you ever lived any other way. The question isn't whether you'll receive. The question is, are you ready to let it in? Because everything you've ever wanted is already here, waiting for you to stop blocking the delivery and start walking as the one who knows they deserve to receive it. The universe always says yes. The only question is, are you ready to say yes back?